Alright, so in this video, we're going to talk about why I love my 2001 Dyna Fxdx. Let's check it out. Sorry, I just had to give you another little... Oh, whoops. Yeah, it does set off car alarms here in Brooklyn. Sorry to whoever is, my bad. Alright, what's going on YouTube? Fxdx Brooklyn is back in the building. And at this point, if you haven't seen it, this is my new bike, 100% dream bike, 2001 Fxdx Dyna Super Glide Sport. And yeah, in the previous videos, if you kind of watched, you're basically seeing a Dyna bro just kind of nerd out riding a 100% dream bike. So in those previous videos I shot with this bike, I probably didn't make a whole lot of sense. You probably just saw me in straight euphoria, living a dream. But now I think I'm at a point where I put enough miles on this bike and I've ridden this bike enough where I can start to tell you why this bike makes me so happy and why I wanted this bike for so long and why I absolutely am in love with this particular year and model of Dyna. Number one is the sound, man. Bike sounds absolutely insane. So just the way that these early model Dynas sound. Number two is I just love the little subtleties about these early models themselves. Just like the key being here, I love that. You know, you just don't see a lot of Harleys that have, you know, a key to the side like that. But this one, of course, does. Let's pull out of here without dying. So yeah, I absolutely love the little subtleties, the little subtle styling points about this particular year and model, and I keep mentioning that key to the side being one of them. You know, it's just not something that you see very often on Harley models, so it's just little things like that that I love, you know. So we talked about the sound, of course. Another thing that I love about this particular model as we get cut off by a Honda Civic, it's always got to be a Honda Civic, right? Is I love the fact that on these models the gauges came stock up on the bars, you know. You know that's what I run on all my bikes, and on my Lowrider S, you know, I had to get an actual kit to make that happen. Shout out to K&S Customs, Kit Sewell, for making that happen. But yeah, I love to have my gauges up where I could actually see them. You know, especially if you're somebody that rides fast, you do not want to be having to look down like this when you want to know that you're doing triple digits. You want to have that in your face. And also, it's nice to know where your RPMs are at as well. So having my information where it's easily accessible and not having to run through a kit to make that happen is a really nice thing about this particular model. So definitely really like the fact that it came stock with the gauges like that. Next thing I love about this bike, and this kind of goes along with the fact that I'm talking about the sound, right? Sorry, I just had to give you another little... Oh, whoops. Yeah, it does set off car alarms here in Brooklyn. Sorry to whoever is, my bad. But yeah, you know, as I talk about the sound of the bike, you know, that of course is directly related to the fact that this bike is carbureted. So I am a huge fan of carbureted bikes. You know, my first bike itself was a carbureted bike and I love that thing. So I've always been a huge fan of carbureted bikes. My first fuel injected bike was my Lowrider S, and don't get me wrong, you know, it's fine, you know, it serves its purpose, but to me, feeling wise and sound wise, there's just nothing crisper than a carbureted bike. You know what I mean? And I don't know, you know, maybe I'm imagining this. I could be imagining this. You know, you all could tell me. I've had a lot of people, especially after the Peter Guns Lowdown, ask this question. It's probably deserves a separate video, honestly, which is like carbureted versus fuel injected. But to me, especially with all my carbureted bikes, I feel like they are way more responsive in a weird way than as opposed to my fuel injected bikes. And yeah, it's kind of hard to explain if you're not finding yourself on both models on and off, but yeah, it's just weird. Like, this bike again just feels a lot more responsive in a weird way that my, you know, for example, my fuel injected Lowrider S does not feel responsive wise, you know. And again, it's not enough to make like a difference in the ride quality, but it's like, you know, when you're putting down a lot of miles, you start to notice these things. So yeah, throttle response, you know, and just the overall feeling of the bike, it just feels crisper, it just feels more snappy, and I kind of knew that going into this. You know, my FXR is carbureted, like I said, my first bike was also carbureted, so a lot of experience on the carbureted bikes. You know, it's just, I think it kind of just comes down to personal preference. Next thing I love about this particular model is that as a sport edition, the Fxdx Sport, right? Like Harley has always done with their S editions and Sport editions. This bike is coming at you stock with dual disc brakes, which makes your old friend FXDLS Brooklyn very happy. I do not run anything that does not have dual disc brakes, you know? You know, it's like we all like to ride fast, you know, especially out here in Brooklyn. We are riding in conditions that you got to be able to stop on a dime. You know, you want to make sure you have the stopping power when you need it. You're always going to be in a situation where you need to stop short for some nonsense. And again, just in general, even if you're not riding in these types of conditions, just if you like to ride fast, it's common sense that you should also be able to brake just as fast. So again, I don't run anything that doesn't have dual disc, and the fact that these models came stock with dual discs makes me very happy. And there's a beautiful Brooklyn site for you. Look at that beautiful J train just making its way downtown. Beautiful, man, beautiful. So yeah, absolutely love the fact that I could stop this bike on a dime if I wanted to, and I didn't have to do any conversions or buy any extra calipers or do the whole damn thing to make it do that. Because when I got the 06 116, that was one of the things I did first, where I was like, dude, we got a 116 S&S engine here. We're going to be hauling at all times. We got to be able to stop this damn thing. So one of the first things I did on that bike is I threw down the money to get a set of dual disc brakes installed, you know. Threw those Nimble brake pads right in there, man. So yeah, love the fact that comes stock on this bike. The next thing I love about this 2001 FXDX, and this is probably the thing that I like the most, that I always liked about it, that made me really pull the trigger on it, and that kind of just comes down to this being a smaller, more nimble Dyna, right? Because you have the combination of a smaller tank, a smaller frame, and 39mm forks, and the combination of that makes this feel like 100% a cross between an FXR and a later Dyna, you know? The fact that this feels nothing like, say, my 2016 Dyna, I feel like that says a lot. to me, it almost feels like you wouldn't even put these bikes in the same category. You know, like I wouldn't even call them both Dynas, just because the ride feels so different in so many different ways. So yeah, the fact that this bike takes a frame that's already very nimble, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on the late Dynas, you know, an Fxdx is my bread and butter. But the fact that it takes an already nimble frame and makes it that much more nimble and that much more easy to throw around, you know, for the type of riding I do, that's always been very attractive to me. And finally, the thing I love about this bike is I really love a worked 88-inch motor, you know? You see the riding I'm doing right now. I don't need a 116 S&S. I don't need a 110 to do what I need to do out here on the streets of Brooklyn. So again, for the day-to-day riding that I'm doing, like assuming I'm not on a cross-country trip, the 88 worked engine, you know, running a giant cam, you know, we got Woods cams in here. I really like that, man. You know, I think I have a lot more fun on a smaller engine that's worked rather than a beast of an engine, say the 116. Don't get me wrong, man, I got my kicks in on that 116, but just being realistic, I'm gonna have more fun on something like this. And obviously, don't sleep on this 88 cubic inch engine. I know what you're saying, you know. Probably more than half of you watching this are on bikes that have engines that are almost twice that size. Don't sleep on it, man. You all saw my first ride on this bike, and this bike had no issues doing real speeds. No issues at all. And again, that's thanks to the thoughtful engine work that the legend Peter Guns took his time to do on this bike. He'll tell you, you know, hit up Peter Guns, man. Don't sleep on these 88 cubic inch engines, man. They'll rip if you throw the right cam in. I have no trouble sitting on fast highway speeds with this bike, I'll tell you that much. The last thing that I really like about this particular bike I'm on right now is I just really like the riding position of this bike. When I get off this bike, and I sat on Vong Asphalt's Lowrider S recently, it's just crazy how much lower to the ground his bike felt as opposed to this. And we're running the same inch rear suspension, so there's no reason for it to feel like that. But when I get off this bike and I sit on a late Dyna, all of a sudden the late Dyna feels really low, where I feel like on this bike I'm sitting higher for some reason. And I don't know, man, like I said, I'm still pretty new to the DX game here, so maybe you all can tell me, like, am I just imagining that, or is that actually true? But I definitely feel like I sit way higher on this bike, and to me that makes me more comfortable in the turns, and that's just a more comfortable riding position in general for me. For whatever reason, the riding position I just like a lot more. Woo! But yeah, guys, you know, I figure if you're able to make it through my first couple videos about this bike, of me just being in euphoria about being somehow not only being on but also owning my dream bike, then I did want to throw this one together to kind of, you know, maybe make a little bit more sense about why I'm so excited about this bike as we pull it in and hopefully not get a ticket from yay old NYPD up ahead. This is what we call staying low. We are doing nothing but law-abiding biking right now. And yeah, on that, I'm sure I missed a couple things, but you know, right now, 100%, absolutely love this bike. Do not sleep on these bikes. They will 100% get after it. They are no joke, ma'am. So yeah, we'll just hang out behind the old Sienna minivan, and that's how you know it's a good bike, man. If you're able to still enjoy yourself behind a minivan, it might be a good bike. Yeah, that's a great. I should make a video on that. How to know if you truly love your bike. If you can be stuck behind a minivan and still having the time of your life, then you got yourself the right bike. But yeah, on that, I absolutely love this bike, guys. I'm the happiest I've probably ever been in my life. You know, the best thing I could say is if you're someone like me, even in 2015 when I was still on a Sportster, you know, I had an attraction to this bike even then, you know. So now, you know, coming at you almost 7 years later, now being on this bike, it's crazy, man. It's everything I dreamed it would be, and I don't regret not searching and finding one earlier, because they're absolutely out there. When my friends saw that I did that first ride on this bike, and I was just blown away. So many of my friends are sending me all these listings of DXs out there. So they're out there, y'all. You know, they're out there if you think it's the right bike for you. Because look, if you could squeeze it into something this small, then it might be the right bike for Brooklyn. And also bring it up to yay old triple digits when you need to, it might be the right bike. On that, I hope you all had half as much fun as I had ripping around on the undisputed champ of Dynas, the 2001 Fxdx. I hope this maybe answered some of your questions that I got in some of the previous videos, and I just hope you're all on something that brings you as much joy as my bikes bring me, because I am very happy right now. On that, stay safe, stay low. Fxdx Brooklyn is out.